Hello there, it's Victor again with the Junkyard. Today I'd like to talk about Superman Returns, a film that's left a lot of people divided. Some people think it's total genius, some people think it's total crap. Some people think it's partly genius with elements of crap. Some people think it's partly crap with elements of genius. I'm gonna go with solid crap.
To start with, I should say I've never really liked Superman. He's never been much more than a deus ex machina with a simplistic worldview to me. He's impossibly strong to begin with. I mean, if he were to punch Lex Luthor as hard as he could, it wouldn't make a thud sound, it wouldn't make a wet crack sound, it wouldn't even make a splat sound. I don't know what every atom in a man's body being accelerated to near relativistic speeds and exploding sounds like, but that's what you'd hear. He's that damn strong. And if he faces something he can't beat up as he is, he gets stronger. Stronger, smarter, whatever, he just becomes what he needs to be. The only time he has to think is when confronted by Kryptonite. Even with the best writing, his character is just never interesting to me. The movies, besides having the same character issues, had the problem of never giving him any good or recognizable villains. Lex Luthor definitely has a place in one or two films, but they just kept bringing him back. And his other villains, usually starring alongside Luthor, were Nuclear Man, a made-up Bizarro clone thing, Richard Pryor, and the Zod crew. Zod and company were the only other villains from the comics besides Lex to be in the movies, and overall they seemed kinda silly. Still, I'd say they did the best they could with what effects and concepts they had available at the time. Years later, in the age of digital special effects, we got a new Superman movie. Will this be a complete reimagining based directly on the comics? Oh, it'll be a continuation of the movies. That's interesting. It'll have a few homages to the previous films, huh? Oh, no? No real continuity between them at all? So, what's connecting them? Ah, you'll be having your actors do impressions of the original cast. Wonderful. Okay, so the film starts with Superman returning to Earth after 5 years of dicking around Krypton by crashing into the Kent's farm, where he falls unconscious in his mother's arms. My God, what could have done this to him? What could have forced this crash landing, and what dread warning does he now carry for the population of planet Earth? Such an enemy must, Oh, never mind, he's just, back. No explanation for the dramatic entrance, no peril. Guess that must have just been super jet lag. And now we go to the film's new villain, the incredible Lex Luthor. Again. When Superman had left, Luthor had fallen to nothing, but he's regained his fortune by sexually servicing an old, sick woman. I'm not taking this out of context, they don't make this the least bit ambiguous. Anyway, Kevin Spacey plays Gene Hackman playing Lex Luthor. Perfect complement to Brandon Routh playing Christopher Reeve playing Superman. While I compliment their ability to play it like that, it is definitely not something I wanted from the movie. Also, this movie holds the number 2 place in the most ridiculous miscasting in history category. Number 1 was Spider-Man 3, which had dead-eyed blonde Kirsten Dunst playing the traditionally spicy redhead Mary Jane, and spicy redhead Bryce Dallas Howard playing the traditionally dead-eyed blonde Gwen Stacy. See, when I say ridiculously miscast, I don't mean ridiculous like extreme. I mean ridiculous like a clown car, logic-defying. Superman Returns is number 2 because it has Parker Posey playing Luthor's pointless tag-along. They have a spunky brunette with lots of personality playing a piece of furniture, and they have a piece of furniture playing a character who's supposed to be a spunky brunette with lots of personality! I was halfway through the movie when I finally had to give up my hope that Kitty was actually Lois Lane deep undercover. Oh, and thanks for flashing back to Superman's childhood again. That was really worth including in the script. Well, back to the story. Superman goes back to the Daily Planet and apparently gets his job back after a 5-year absence. We're introduced to Perry White as a sellout hack and Jimmy Olsen as an anachronism. We're also introduced to a cardboard cutout of Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane, her husband Cyclops, and her son, Super Bastard. Lois has basically moved on and is pretty happy with her marriage, but that doesn't stop both Clark and in-time Superman from trying to get into her pants. How noble. Anyway, Lex has come up with a plan to take over the world and destroy the newly back-in-action Superman at the same time. Crystals! He'll use some crystals he stole from the Fortress of Solitude, this is why he had a key in the comic books by the way, wrap the crystals in kryptonite, and grow his very own continent of radioactive rock. Well, while this would be a pretty good way to keep an endless supply of kryptonite on hand, it's actually a pretty dumb real estate scam. I mean, everyone would want to live on a barren, sharp-edged expanse of crystal, right? I mean, it's like the writers were trying to think of some way to show us something that required special effects that involved a smarmy bald man, and the best they could come up with was crystals. It doesn't even make scientific sense. Crystals don't grow from the inside, they accumulate. And moreover, the crystals are apparently growing from nothing. At first I thought it was some ridiculous idea where it turns the water into crystal, which is already soft science enough to cut with a butter knife. But since the crystal was supposed to flood the world, we have to assume this movie was throwing one of the most basic laws of nature out the window, namely the one that states that matter can be neither created nor destroyed. Meanwhile, Luthor has of course taken Lois captive along with her son. Here we discover through subtle hints that the kid is not in fact Lois's husband's, but Superman's. So not only did he leave without saying goodbye, he left her knocked up. Well, now Superman flies out to save the day, followed closely behind by Cyclops, aka Richard White. Now let's take a moment to compare these two. Superman, unkillable flying god creature with nice abs. Richard, quite killable human with a flying license. Now, they've done a good job of making a fairly simple point. Ordinary men, driven by certain motives, can be Supermen in their own rights. But maybe they made their point too well, as I found White quite a bit more likable than Ubermensch over there. Well, Superman confronts Luthor and finds out rather belatedly that he's standing on a mountain of Kryptonite, and Lex stabs him in the ass with a chunk of the stuff. He goes down, and Richard swoops in to save him. Now here's where the movie went from boring and awkward to mind-shattering for me. An injured Superman goes back and flies in under the Kryptonite continent and starts lifting it. With much struggling, he manages to heft it out of the atmosphere and throw it into space. Well, after that... Wait, what? Damn it! He lifted a continent made out of Kryptonite into space? The thing that instantly weakens him and in theory could quickly kill him doesn't even sap his strength enough to stop him from lifting an island? So his one weakness, the only thing that can put anyone on equal footing with him, is irrelevant? He can just try harder and overcome cellular breakdown or whatever? Maybe if he'd flown into a smelting plant and got himself covered with lead to buy himself some temporary immunity, I could have bought it. But unlike in the other movies, where he had to overcome enemies by occasionally outthinking them, this time he just tries harder. So now he's nothing but brute force personified. He's not even a man in this film, he's just super. And a pretty mediocre super at that. Well, he crashes back to Earth. But is he okay? He looks dead! Of course he's okay, don't be a dumbass. Well, realizing that the kid is his, he goes over to Lois's house and creepily whispers to the kid that he'll always watch over him and crap. Well, Superman, watch over him from a distance, okay? A great distance. I hear Mars is lovely this time of year. Okay, let's review this character. Before the events of the film, he knocks up Lois and then flees to his dead planet to sightsee. He comes back and starts creepily watching over everybody from on high. In his spare time, he tries to get back in the pants of a woman he'd abandoned years earlier, shamelessly and selfishly trying to get between her and her husband, a brave and loving man who is raising Superman's bastard child as his own after Clark abandoned him and his mother. Besides being a complete louse in this film, he's also quite stupid, doing nothing clever to fight Lex Luthor, relying entirely on his infinite rule-breaking strength. And throughout this whole thing, and assumably even after the movie ends, he's playing goofy, nerdy Clark Kent in plain sight of the woman who he'd impregnated and the man he's trying to cuckold. He's sitting just a few desks away from these people whose lives he's thrown into chaos, smugly playing the fool. Clark Kent, you are a tasteless, self-satisfied son of a dead alien bitch. This movie has transformed a boringly heroic character into a boringly creepy villain. Bryan Singer, the man who made the relatively good X-Men films 1 and 2, turned down making 3 so he could direct this film, thereby giving us one franchise-killing X-Men film and one unsubtle Christ allegory that ruined what little I ever liked about Superman.
Well, that's all I can think of to say about Superman Returns. I guess there's more I could say, but I'd really start sounding crazy. Well, this has been Victor with the Junkyard, signing off.
Well, this is the end.
Gah! Okay. Now?
I'm convinced.
Good. Well, this...